The government will miss its deadline for completing applications for £5 billion worth of funding to remove flammable cladding in the wake of the Grenfell Tower tragedy. The BBC understands that managing agents who administer most tower blocks with dangerous cladding have yet to sign any contracts with the government which would release funding. Hundreds of thousands of people remain concerned they won't be able to get dangerous cladding removed from their homes. Here's our Consumer Affairs correspondent, Sarah Corker.
I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't concentrate.
Unless that agreement is signed, we're stuck and we're trapped.
Making a very difficult situation for leaseholders far, far worse.
A chorus of concern about the government's building safety fund. £5 billion has been set aside to remove flammable cladding from buildings like this one in St Albans. Alison Hills moved here in 2018. The fire safety issues were discovered months later. Now she's moved out.
You're sat here in a flammable flat 24 hours a day, particularly during lockdown, knowing that your building could go up in flames any minute. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't concentrate. My mental health was in absolute bits.
But Alison's building, like hundreds of others, isn't being made safe. Managing agents who act for the building's freeholders are refusing to sign contracts with the government to release the funding. Nigel Glenn represents the agents. He says the contract, while paying for cladding problems, makes them liable for all other fire safety defects.
We represent 325 managing agents. None of them have signed. We've talked to freeholders, we've talked to cladding action groups. As far as I know, none of them have signed. It's a really difficult situation. We're talking here of hundreds of blocks, potentially hundreds of thousands of people, and we just can't sign it because by doing so, you take on the liability which would render you technically insolvent.
The Ministry of Housing says the managing agent's interpretation of the contract is fundamentally flawed and allows cladding removal without leaving them or leaseholders liable for other fire safety costs. Leaseholders like Stephen in Manchester say they've been waiting long enough.
You think you might be able to see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, and then now, unfortunately, they won't sign the agreement. So it's like it doesn't matter how much money the government make available for us, unless that agreement is signed, we're stuck and we're trapped.
The longer this dispute between managing agents and the government goes on, the longer people living in these buildings are having to pay out thousands of pounds a month on interim fire safety measures.
The Ministry of Housing has now said it will allow applications to be processed beyond the end of June deadline on a case-by-case basis. That is some comfort for Stephen and Alison and hundreds of thousands of others still caught up in this cladding crisis. But their wait to live in a safe home continues. Sarah Corker, BBC News.